conversation by venting to each other, which was so wonderful.
Get it out of
And
the way.
yeah, much needed. Anyway, thank you so much for coming live and with me today. I'm so excited by everything that's happened in your life. Now, full disclosure, you'll recognize Jenn because since we started working together, she has become one of my best friends in the whole world. And so you'll see her all over my social media, but that does in no way invalidate the intense amount of work and healing that she has been doing since we met. So that is why we are here. I want Jenn to share from her own experience, kind of what her experience of working with me has been, and just some of the shifts and things, especially because Jenn, like one of the reasons I wanted to grab you right now is because of that like absolutely phenomenal testimonial that you posted last week. I literally couldn't have planned it better than that. And I think it's really important when I post testimonials that people get to see like who's on the other side of that, that it's a real person, that it's not like a bot generated
Yeah.
testimonial, that we didn't do an AI chat GPT thing, that like you're a real person having real experiences, that they can like go to your Facebook page and see that you're a real person, you know? So I so appreciate you making time to chat with me today.
Absolutely.
Yay. Okay. So I'm going to ask Jenn some questions and then I'm going to shut my mouth and just let her share. So Jenn, my first question for you is, I would love for you to share a little bit of where you were in life, where you were like with your mental health and what was going on before you started working with me.
Oh gosh, it feels like ages ago. And I get emotional thinking about it, just because there has been so much growth and so much change. So, before I actually met you, I had gone through a fairly devastating divorce that was very difficult on me, very difficult on my children. I was living in Alaska at the time, in Anchorage, Alaska. Best place in the world. It was our home, but we were forced to move back to California because of the economy crash there. I would have stayed there gladly for probably the rest of my life, but I ended up having to come back home for work. And at that point, I was going through a very difficult co-parenting situation with my ex. I had gotten into a new relationship probably about 8 months after my divorce was final, with an absolutely, wonderful, wonderful person, who was really supportive, and kind of showed me um, that there's different types of individuals out there, a different type of person. There is somebody who is filled with love and support and who will just, be your rock star and, kind of solid for you. And we became that for each other. And he helped me a lot through the co-parenting issues that I was having. He became an absolutely impeccable and wonderful stepfather to my two children, and gave them something that they had never seen before as far as a loving parental figure other than myself. And so I was going through a lot with that. It was very stressful. My job was very stressful at the time. My son was having some mental health breakdowns at the time where he was having suicidal tendencies. He was diagnosed with ADHD and generalized anxiety disorder. I had to take, leave of absence from work for a few months, for about 4 months, to make sure that he was good. And pretty much from the pressure of everything that I was going through at that time, I kind of had a mental breakdown myself, where, I hit into a very deep depression. I had a hard time um, doing anything really. I would take him to school and then come home and lay down, and I would just like, crash and kind of collapse within myself because I was going through this mental breakdown, fighting with their dad all the time, fighting for my son to make sure that he got the help that he needed. And I was doing everything that I could. And then just my job was incredibly stressful at the time. And so basically took some time off, and during that time I was able to help my son get the help that he needed, to really kind of set him on a better path with medication, with seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist. and things started to turn around a little bit there. Co-parenting, I kind of learned to not get so emotionally involved with that to where it would get me worked up, and kind of took a step back. I also started to really do a lot of reflection within myself as far as things that I had done within the marriage and relationship that I was not happy with. My taking account and taking acknowledgement for my faults within it, not saying that anything that he did was okay, but I wanted to take responsibility for myself, and I didn't want to be that way anymore. So I decided that I wanted to start working on myself to make those changes, if I wanted to continue to have a healthy relationship. And it was only because I was in a healthy relationship at the time that I really was able to see that kind of reflection. And that's, my partner was my reflection at the time, where he kind of provided that mirror to me and helped me see that without coming down on me, or, he was extremely supportive during the whole healing process and everything. So I started to take some steps for that. I also made some changes. We were living in a tiny apartment, in a very crappy LAUSD school district that we were at, which wasn't beneficial to my son. And I really didn't want to have my youngest son go into it. So I decided that I had to make some changes. And so I've always been able to manifest things for myself. And so I really did some heavy meditation, prayer at the time, the things that I wanted to change. I wanted our environment to change. And I thought that that would help jumpstart or initiate the healing for all of us. And so I manifested basically a place for us to move to, that was, much bigger, provided, a much better environment for my children situationally. Their friends were nearby them, a better school system. And from there, it kind of just, it steamrolled all of the changes and the growth that I started doing. So I started, getting involved with other like-minded people, as far as doing meditations and really doing some programs and workshops that helped me focus on the things that I was grateful for in my life, beautifying my life essentially. And it was through those groups and those ladies that I met and I became really close with, that actually caused the introduction of me to you, when I had one of your programs. And it feels like it was decades ago now, but it opened me up to a program that you were doing, and it was a free program, and it was a limiting belief. Um, and so my girlfriend Shannon was working under you and getting trained under you. And so she helped work me through one of these limiting belief processes. And one of the limiting beliefs that I did, the first one that I did, my desire was to change my relationship with my ex. And I wanted to stop being so angry at him, for not being the father that I thought he should be to my children, and placing those expectations on him. And she really helped me through your process to go through and understand that essentially he was being the best dad that he could with experience and the upbringing that he had. And all I could do was essentially do the same thing on my side to be the best parent that I could, try and counteract some of the things that were still taking place that were not healthy, and not healthy in a mental health way for our kids. And so I kind of released a lot of that anger towards my ex, realized that, he is who he is and he was doing the best that he could. I placed a lot of grace within that and forgiveness. And I really let go of the anger that I had for that. And I think that was, one of the biggest things that was holding me back in my growth and my healing, at that time. And so once I did that, it's like everything just started exponentially growing. And I think the first time that I heard your voice when we did this limiting process, and you took us through it, you put us into hypnosis, and we went through the whole process of it, came out, I was just like, man, I got to meet this lady. like, she's just fantastic. It was like your voice instantaneously just connected with. And it brought me such calming peace to go through the process that I did it a few times, because obviously, like, that limiting belief was so strong that it was like probably a 20. Instead of a 10, it was like a 20 when I had it. And so it took me a couple times of going through it to fully release it and get down to like a 1 or 2. And I just realized after that, I was like, I have to do everything that I can to work with her. Like, because I felt so much growth and so much, just freeing, like the weight had been lifted as far as my anger and my sadness and everything that I was so upset about.
That's so
And
beautiful. I
yeah,
love
and
it so much.
it was such an amazing feeling to not feel that hatred. Um,
Yay. And I think there's some really beautiful things that I just would like to like commend you on, right? One is that I think that there's a lot of people who have had experiences with people in their lives that have created some deep trauma, right? That they're walking around with that hurt and that anger and that hatred and that loathing, that are not enjoying their experiences with that don't like feeling that way or having this kind of tumultuous relationship. So I commend you on just acknowledging that and confronting that. And the other thing that I really think is so beautiful is that you were seeking, right? You were looking for ways to exit out of a situation, just an emotional situation that you weren't fond of. You didn't like being like that. And instead of just sitting there waiting for someone to kind of rescue you from that emotional situation, or instead of just sitting there in your blame and in your anger at your ex, like you actually did something proactive about it. And I think that makes a massive difference. And so people who are hearing your story or reading about this, I think that's one of the things that's really important is that there's a part of the responsibility of your happiness that you took charge of. I think that's really important to highlight. And thank you so much for sharing that so vulnerably, because it's important that people understand that the process isn't just, you know, alakazam, you want things changed, and then someone rescues you from your life. Like there are so many steps that you took in order to improve your situation. Okay,
Yeah,
next.
and I
Oh yeah, go
knew
ahead.
I sorry, no, and I was gonna say I knew also like the drive for me was not only I didn't want to feel that because I wanted to have happiness. I didn't want somebody else having control over my emotions either, which I felt that that was. And I also knew it wasn't healthy for my kids. Like I wanted to provide the most neutral space that I could for my children. So that way they didn't hear about any of the anger or the hatred, which they were already hearing from both of us because we were angry and it was hard for us to not feel that and not express it because it was so ingrained in both of us at the time that I wanted to provide that different perspective for them that like you can go through life. There's lots of changes. People, I've taught them people come and go. There's some people that are going to stay in your life forever. There are other people that are going to come in and only be there for a short period of time. And there's something that you're going to gain from each of those experiences. And you have to understand that, as sad it is for somebody to leave, like it's not devastating. It doesn't end your life to have somebody to walk out of it. It's like you have to know that that's sometimes the process and you move on from it, you gain the growth from it, and it's going to, catapult you into something else that you're going to have an experience on. So
That's beautiful. That's beautiful and so wise. So much wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Now, then we did get the beautiful opportunity of working together, which was so wonderful. And even though, what is so amazing to me is that when we started working together, you were the sole breadwinner of your family and you were living paycheck to paycheck, and you just figured it out. And I think that is so amazing. Like you just figured out a way to make it happen. Now, what would you say? And I know it's been quite some time. I think it's been 3 years since we started working together.
it feels like more, but yeah.
It does. It definitely does feel like decades because so much life has
Yeah.
happened since we met. What would you say some of the biggest shifts were for you during that time? Like mindset shifts. I do have a separate question that are what are some of your wins?
Okay.
So this one is more like, what were the shifts for you? Like, what are some of the shifts that you had to make or that we made together that kind of shifted paradigms, that changed things for
There's
you?
so many of them. There are so many of them. So the first one was because of the trauma that I went through growing up, both from sexual abuse, from being abandoned. really, really poor relationships and poor choices. A lot of it was my own because my own poor choices. The biggest mindset shift that I went through was like understanding and really believing and seeing my value as a person and an individual, because I saw it from certain perspectives, but the way that I grew up, it was very much a vanity viewpoint where you weren't worth anything unless you were skinny, unless you looked good, unless you had makeup on, unless your hair was done. I mean, I grew up modeling when I was younger, and so it was so ingrained that if I gained 5 pounds, that I wasn't worth being loved. Or if I gained any kind of weight in my face or anywhere, it wasn't going to be attractive to anyone. If I didn't have makeup on, I would never go outside without makeup on. And now it's like I never even wear makeup, like unless we're going out. Um, but that was a huge mindset shift, was seeing my value. I saw my value intellectually, but it was always tied to vanity as well. So no matter how intelligent I was, no matter how much I kept climbing that corporate ladder, no matter how many promotions I got, it was still always tied to not feeling valued enough because I had gained, 20 pounds, or I had gained 30 pounds, or I wasn't able to get to the gym 6 days a week like I used to. And it was an obsessive compulsive mindset where, I was so ingrained with that if I gained a couple pounds, I would starve myself the next couple days or the next couple weeks. Or I would go to the gym 6 to 7 days a week to work out because I was so afraid of my body changing. And then after having kids, not being able to get back to that, it was like I didn't feel any kind of beauty about myself because I didn't look the way that I did in my 20s and my 30s. So that was the biggest mindset shift, I think, was not really caring what my outside looked like, and really caring more about how I was inside, how healthy I was, taking responsibility for my actions, for my decisions, um, having boundaries. I had zero boundaries when I first came to you, and my boundaries that I did have, which I wouldn't even really call them boundaries, it was more like just deal breakers. Like, if somebody did A, B, or C, I was done. I'd walk away. I don't even care if I regretted it. I would just never look back again. Um, and so those shifts with understanding that, like, people make mistakes. People don't always realize how they're behaving or the decisions that they're making, how it affects other people, or they've been raised a certain way and not been raised in a healthy way, where, to deal with their emotions, to sit down and talk about things, to not raise your voice at other people or call names or anything like that. I mean, I grew up in such a volatile household where that was constant, screaming, yelling at each other, calling each other names, and it all started with my dad. My father, my biological father, was the one that probably ingrained that the most, was that you're not beautiful or valuable as a woman unless you're skinny, and you stay skinny for the rest of your life. You stay as beautiful as you can. You wear makeup to make sure that you look good for your partner, and you don't work. Basically stay home and take care of them and wait on them hand and foot, and whatever they do, you let them do whatever they do because they're the man, pretty much. And so having to unwind all of that was, incredibly difficult. And especially for the fact that I've always been driven motivationally and ambitiously just to have a career, whether it was, going to college or, starting out in the different fields that I've done and kind of shifting a little bit along the way. There was always that guilt in the back of my head, and it came through with every partner too, that they would make me feel guilty for being more successful than them, making more money than them, being able to climb the ladder, just because, it's one of the areas where I have learned to value that I can catch on to things fairly quickly. I have fairly good common sense. Most of the time I make fairly good decisions, although, I have my moments as well still. So that was a big thing that changed. And then also just another thing was how I view people, how I view my partners. So the things that I looked for in partners was also very vain, completely. There, I had certain requirements or guidelines of what a person should look like, and what their body physique should look like, what their face should like what kind of career that they should have, that they should, educational background, car they drive, all of those things that are very superficial. Um, and it was just, I could not get around that for the longest time. And it wasn't until after my divorce, with my kid's dad, that I really started to do some of that looking in, like, these were all the things that I was going after before, but have they really in my history resulted with anybody really good? And I have had a few good people, good seeds that I've dated, but it was far and few between. There was definitely more bad apples than there were good seeds. And so it was after that that I started taking a look at it and really started to look inside at people and what they were able to bring to the table, and value that so much more with than just looking at the outside stuff. And it didn't mean that it was perfect when it came through, but it allowed me to, I think, to be more accepting of them, of myself, and to really see what was important, which was something that I was not capable of seeing before.
Mm,
Um, you,
that's one of
yeah,
your shifts that I'm just so incredibly proud of for you for, because I mean, like, in just such a short space of time, you have turned from looking at the outside of people to just only paying attention to what's inside, and then just your level of tolerance with people's humanity has improved so dramatically. And that has given you so much more patience and grace with your own humanity, right? Because I know that
big,
that has been a struggle for you. Just, making mistakes, not being perfect has been a real big struggle. Yeah, it's been so beautiful to witness.
yeah, no, I mean, I was raised that you do everything perfect and you don't make mistakes. And I absolutely did not want my children to be raised that way because of how poorly it made me feel about myself. And even to this day, I am much better now than I ever was before. But, getting nauseous at the fact of making a mistake and then having to come to terms with, like, well, shit, I made a mistake. Like, what could I have done differently? At least now it's a little bit more retrospective, where I can look back and I can gain some insight on what I've done, what I would do differently. And I even catch myself a little bit quicker, if I'm snappy, or if I, said something and I'm like, fuck, that wasn't like the nicest thing to say. Like, maybe I should go back and apologize for saying it a little bit differently and be like, I was being an asshole. Like, I'm sorry. Um, but I would not have done that before. Before I would have been like, well, just F them. Like, I don't care. Like, we'll move on. They do enough stuff to me that they deserve a little back to them. And it was just more of a tit for tat. And, I definitely am still observant about everything that is done to me. I don't, I wouldn't say I hold on to, I don't let it go. Like, it's in the back of my head, but I'm not constantly pointing on it, but I'm also not forgetting it, because I'm not going to just let somebody continue to do repetitive things to me that are not, that are a violation of my boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm hearing in that is that you've learned balance, right? You've learned that people will be human, people will make mistakes, people are going to show up in their trauma sometimes. They're going to do things that are stupid, they're going to say things that are stupid, that are hurtful, but not necessarily abusive, right? They're just going to say things in their trauma. But with those boundaries in place, you can monitor, like, what you are ready or willing to have in your life, right? There's grace for humanity, and there's a stop, there's a backstop that says, I'm willing to be graceful with you to a certain point, and here's that certain point, and beyond
Yep.
that point, there's rigidity, right? There's like,
Yeah, exactly.
hell no. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You've
love
hit a
that.
brick wall.
Exactly, that's so beautiful. I would love it if you would share some of the wins that you've experienced, right? So, like, maybe increases in income, drops in money that just came out of the blue, what you now have in your life that you didn't have before. Just share some of those things, if you don't mind, please.
So there's been a lot throughout the years since we started working with each other. So from manifesting that place to move into when we moved back out to Santa Clarita Valley, um, and not always being 100% sure of if it was viable, if I could do it, but listening to my team and ask my team, like, is this a move that I'm supposed to make? Am I supposed to take aligned action here? And every time my team has told me to take aligned action, I have taken aligned action. I have never said no. I've never doubted it. I've just been like, okay, I've got to have faith in this and trust in this, because if I don't and I second guess it, it's not going to happen. All these positive things that I'm seeing that could potentially be my future is not going to happen. So, the house is definitely one. I fell in love, and I had a wonderful, wonderful short marriage to somebody who was very good to me. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for personal reasons. But from that, it taught me how to love. So I think that was probably, out of everything I've had, I think that's one of the most important things, because I didn't know that, how to actually love somebody unconditionally and continue to love them, even if you're not with them, but to continue to love them and be happy for them and wish the best for them, and the best for yourself, and understand that it's not always together, as long as you both have beautiful lives that you can grow in. The other thing are, career wise, I've gone from being in my industry that I work in, from being an analyst doing what I was doing, to jumping into a management position when I was in Alaska, really taking that and growing from it, and coming back to California and really being able to see how I could apply those things that I've learned, and growing even higher in the industry and in my jobs, to the point that I was actually, recruited away from my company that I was with for 18 years. I was always afraid to leave, because I was, afraid of going to a different company. I'd been with them for so long. Probably one of my strongest characteristics is loyalty. So making a change is something that I don't take lightly at all with anything in my life, whether it's relationships, career, friends, or anything like that. I'm loyal to the bone, and to death,
Yeah,
even if
you
I,
are.
I
Oh,
don't
you
talk to
are.
you.
You
Yeah, even if
are.
I'm,
And can
if,
you share, if you're open to, um, how much of an income raise you got when you were recruited to the new company?
yeah, so it was an easy $20,000 increase to where I was at, putting me into, almost a quarter, little less than a quarter mil a year, which was great, with bonus options for the company that I was going to, is taking me from a managerial position where I was at, and I was trying to go higher. I had been with the company for such a long time that I felt I had earned my way to being a vice president. I had earned my way into, having more individuals underneath me. And so I wanted more responsibility. And so being recruited away, it was not only an increase in salary, but an increase in potential bonus options and stock options with the company. But also, I became second in command in the company, working with the president of the company, and being his right hand person. And it's been 2 years now, and it's grown exponentially. Even still, where it's different to be the person that everyone is coming to ask questions, and to determine what the processes are going to be for the business to help it grow, and being able to actually say, okay, I have this idea that I want to do, like, this is what my idea is, and being able to present it, make the decisions for it, implement it, and then see how well the process is doing. And I have to say, like, having the responsibility to be able to do that when I've come here, it's and seeing everything, the company's been growing exponentially, just in the
Yeah,
quality of the people that we've had.
that's
And
beautiful. And speaking of that, can you touch on the win that you shared last week, which was that new contract that you just
yeah,
got for your company?
yeah, so about a year and a half ago, we started working on a proposal. and the proposal was for the military, which is primarily 90% of our contracts that we do with my company. And so it was a very large invasive species contract down, and it's in various locations where they have bases. And I was in charge of putting together the cost estimate and the whole proposal with it, working with a team. And put it in a year and a half ago. A year later, they asked us just for an update on our pricing, and we went through, we spent the time to do it, really dig into it, felt very good with the team about what we had come up with. It was something we could produce. It was quality work. Put it in, and we got notice that we were selected for it. So there was 4 firms selected for it. It's a $98 million contract over the next 5 years, and with potential add-ons to those. And so we were one of 4, and it's not a even breakdown. It's pretty much they submit the orders to us. Whoever comes up with the best approach for it, the best pricing on it, usually is awarded it. And so far for a similar contract that we have, we've been in the highest being issued these contracts. So anticipating about 20 to anywhere from 20 to $40 million of the awards to anticipate that we'll be getting, which is great for our staff to continue to say that we've got enough work to keep our 100 employees busy for the next 5 years. And on top of that, I'm the point of contact person with our client and our team within the company. So this is kind of my baby. I'm running it. I get to implement all the processes that I want to and need to make it run efficiently, which is pretty fantastic. And the fact that I'm not doing it by myself, I've got an amazing team working with me and under me, and that I really rely on for their expertise. And I really try to promote that kind of environment that none of us are doing this alone. Like, I may be wonderful at creating these estimates and creating costing for clients and really being able to pinpoint on the needs that they have, but I can't do any of it without the rest of my team. And so we've got a lot of trustworthy
That's
people, and
so beautiful. That's
yeah.
so great. What an amazing leader you have become, Jen. Like, you have just become such just a pinnacle of leadership in your industry. And I'm so proud of you to have watched you, transform so incredibly, like from the depths of despair and depression to see you even being confident enough to take on something like this. And of course, of course, you've had your humanity. And I think that's what's one of the most beautiful things that I really like to highlight, is that there's no level of success that you can get to where you can escape your humanity, right? You
Yeah.
just landed a $20 to $40 million contract. And there have been so many times within the last 18 months as you've been working on this contract that you've said, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm cut out for this. And I think it's just so sweet and just so raw and honest, to have witnessed that this transition. And you talk about, it's so fun that you talk about this $98 million contract that you just got approved for in such a yeah, this is, just a thing. This is one of the things in numerous things. It's so cool. Just like how relaxed you are about it. And then I just have one more question for you, which is, what would you say to somebody who is skeptical of this process, of this healing process, or who is skeptical of working with me? Like, from your experience, what would you say if you were encountering someone and they were like, oh, I don't know if this works, or I don't know about this lady, or who she thinks she is? Like, how would you respond?
Well, I mean, I'm a pretty blunt person, so I'm not going to shy away from that. But pretty much if somebody is saying something like that, I would have to ask them, like, what is it really worth to you to make changes in your life? You're sitting there contemplating whether it's worth it or not, but where are you getting if you're not taking any action, you're not taking any steps? So take a risk, jump in, take a risk. Yeah, it's hard. It is not going to be easy at all, and you have to do the work. Nobody does the work for you, but really, are you getting anywhere else by not doing anything, by going for something that doesn't cost money or is cheaper, or you're not investing in yourself? Like, you have to show yourself that you care and that you value who you are and what you want to do and where you want to go, and show yourself that you value that. But also, you're just sitting around on your ass, not doing anything. You're definitely not going to get any progress from it. And you can read a million different self-help books if you want, but that shit doesn't always work. And it's not, you need like a more individualized, personalized experience that's really going to get through it. And the one of the things that really attracted me to you is, like, as far as working with you, was when you talked about the science aspect of our self-conscious, our subconscious, and how that really directs a lot of our decision making. And I really had never thought about it before, but I'm very intellectual when it comes to that stuff, but I never thought about it that way before. And I had tried all kinds of different self-help books and different, mantras to meditate to, and everything like that. And the problem is it wasn't changing the way that I made decisions. It wasn't changing the way that I behaved in certain situations. And I was really frustrated, and I was like, I have no idea what to do. So here you come with this, explanation and the solution, and you do a process, and you're even saying, okay, I'll give you this for free, just so you can see that, hey, it works. If you put in the effort, you do it a couple times, you really try and shift your mindset, like, you're going to see a change. And that's all the proof that you need, really. Like, for me, that's all the proof that I needed, was to see that change about how I felt and my largest limiting belief that I had, and to see any shift when I had done years and years of therapy. I had worked on it hard to try and change, even within myself, how I was thinking about that situation. And it would last for a tiny bit of time, but it was never anything permanent that lasted. And it was always come up, and I was just like, I was frustrated, and I was like, what can I do? And then all of a sudden you popped into my life. And so, I would say to anyone who's considering it, or you're not sure if they want to do it, like, you've obviously shown up into their feed or into their life for some specific reason, because they have been asking the universe for some kind of help. So if you're asking the universe for help, and the universe gives you a clue or a hint of something that can help you, and you don't take that aligned action, you have nobody to blame but yourself if there are no changes. Really.
That was so beautifully said. Thank you so much. Wow. That was like, you have just shared some solid goals. And I just really love that your testimony is it's so beautiful. It's such an inspiration, right? Because anybody who's experiencing life as you did 3 years ago will be able to so heavily relate to what you're going through. And anybody who's feeling stuck where they are in their lives will be able to feel inspired and will get hope from your share. And I am so grateful to you in my life. And I'm so grateful that you took some time out to chat with me today, my darling. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I love you to death.
I love
And yeah,
you.
it's anything I would tell anyone is just take the leap of faith, because you're going to lose time. You don't do it now, you wait 6 months. Look at all of that change and growth you could have had in the last 6 months. And you could have been
Wow.
so much further along.
Wow. That was so well said. I love
I
you
mean,
so much.
true.
Thank you, sweetheart. I love you, love you, love
Love you
you.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
That was awesome. Wait, are we? Oh, let me think we're still live streaming. Let me stop the live stream. Stop, stop, stop.